Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Blankenberg, and welcome to the March 2020 release roundup. As we do every month, we get on here and we talk about all of the latest features and technologies and things that are available to us as Alexa developers that are new and have been released in the last 30 days or so. That's generally how this works. We do have the chat open. I have some of my colleagues joining us there in case they need to share any links or information with you as we go through this. But let's get right into it. So the first thing that I really want to talk about, honestly, is the new website. The Amazon Alexa developer website has changed quite a bit. You can see that I've got call outs to some of the information that you may want to know right there at the top. There's also a bunch of great information if you're learning how to get into specific things. A lot of this information was there, but there's two specific places that I want to call out. The first one is there's now a console button baked right into this page. Oftentimes when I would come here, I could find the information I was looking for, and then I wanted to go to the dev console, and it often required me to go off and dig into historical links that I had or a bookmark or something like that. But now, oftentimes I find some of my searches take me directly to the Alexa website, and there's a built-in console button for you right there. So that's one of the big things for me. The other one, which I think I have right here, is this What's New page. And if you haven't seen this before, this isn't necessarily new, although it's been updated. One of the things that you can find in here is feature updates. And in here, we show you a list of all of the most recent updates that have come out that we've announced on this page. This hasn't been updated for the releases that I'm talking about today, but that's coming very soon. But you can also roll back through this if you want to view all the updates. This is a page I would bookmark. I would recommend checking this out. But in here, you can see all of the things that we've launched, all of the little features and nuances that you may already be even using today. But sometimes you scroll through this and you're like, wait a second, I didn't know that was a possibility, because it's hard to keep up with everything that's going on all the time. So I think that this What's New page, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to drop it in the chat here and drop it right there. So that's the feature updates thing, but I think you guys can all find the Alexa website from there. But I think that's a really nice feature as well. But that console button has made a huge difference for me in just being able to get to the places that I need to do it. So that's the big things that I wanted to call out on the website. But if you haven't noticed, it has been overhauled. There's a lot of new content and a lot of new interesting things on growing your business and understanding the technology better. So it's worthwhile. If you haven't been there in a little while, definitely check that out. The next piece is very, very interesting, and I haven't had a chance to play with this one yet, but I want to make sure that I spend a decent amount of time talking about it because I think conceptually it's an important thing for all of us to know exists, but it's not something that I think you're necessarily going to use day to day, and that's the Audit Logs API. So this is a new API that's available that allows you to basically audit all of the things that you're doing against the Skill Management API, SMAPI. And so what this means is that you can go in now and see all of the things that you've ever sent commands in for SMAPI. You can go in and see exactly what's happened. If you published a skill, if you updated something, if you changed your model, every one of those is listed as a line item, and I can take you through this a little bit. But it basically goes through all the interactions that you might have, and there's two groups that we primarily think are going to do this. The first one is you're an independent developer, you're building a skill, and you want to see all the logs of operations. The other one, though, is if you're building tools, this allows you to very easily understand how your users are using your tool to communicate with the API. So this is another really useful tool that, again, it has specific purposes. It's not something I think you'll use every day, but when you need it, man, is this something that's super valuable. So all you need to do is make calls over the command line like we normally do using the Ask CLI. And then you need to be able to communicate directly with SMAPI. When you make your calls in, though, and this is where I find it kind of interesting, this is the request that I might make into the API. I can say that I want skill manifests, I want to see utterance data that's come out of this. There's a bunch of operations that I'll show you in just a second. But on top of that, when we come in here to the response, every one of these items, if I can find it here, these are my audit logs. And so based on the criteria that I sent it, it gives me all of this information. And so this whole chunk here is one log, basically, for what's going on inside of this audit. And so I can see in here that this one was associating a skill with a catalog. We're going to talk about catalogs in a little while. And then this one down here, this was publishing a skill. So I used the publish command using SMAPI to push that skill to publication. So each one of these, based on the request that I made, will bring me back a large list of objects that I can check out and play with and identify exactly what's going on with my API. Down here at the bottom, I can show you that, where would we go? These are the operations that are possible. So all the things related to account linking, certainly being able to query the audit logs, that's something that we would also want to be able to know, right? Catalog content uploads. We're going to talk about catalogs in a little bit, but you can see that we have lots of opportunities to see all the actions that may take place via our catalogs. Intent request histories, interaction model management, in-skill product management, so creating ISPs, changing them, modifying them, taking them away from a skill even. Skill metrics. Again, these aren't the calls to get that data. This whole thing, the audit log, is to see, oh, someone went and checked that stuff at this date at this time. Those are the things that we get from this audit log. A lot of this stuff is already possible. We're already able to interact with a lot of this data today. It's just that now you have a running list of all of the interactions that have happened with your skill using the SMAPI so that you can see very clearly how things are working, what your workflow looks like, how people are hitting the API for your skills. And so that is where all of this goes. Hey, did things get submitted? Did we enable skills? How are we managing our skills? You can see there's a long, long list of things that we can dig into and see how things were done. And so, like I said, this is one of those things that's very, very interesting and very, very useful when you need it, but I don't, at least me personally, I don't think I'm going to use this every day. I do appreciate someone changing my light to pink. That's always very nice. I want to make sure I'm not missing out on any comments either as we go through this. So how many people are considering writing a Grease Monkey script to the "Are you paying attention" box? That's funny. Oh, they're all talking about the chat box. Okay, cool. I thought maybe I was missing on a conversation, but we are all set. But I'm almost certain Justin turned this pink. I'm almost thinking that he's automated something, so he just clicks a button and it makes my light change. Avalee21, thank you for being here. It's very nice to have new folks showing up and playing. Lord of Sound, thank you. I'd love to know who changed it pink too, but I think it's Justin. He tends to turn it pink quite often, and so that would be my guess, is that Just Jeffress, who's there in the chat room, is changing my light to pink. For those of you that don't know, I was careless and I built a skill with my name, and if you ask that skill to change the light to a specific color, it'll do it for you. So if you want to have a little adventure and mess with my light while we're doing this stream, you're more than welcome to. Okay, so I've talked at length, I think, about what's going on with this audit log API. Again, like I said, I think that there's a lot of interesting data in here that you can use, especially as a tool builder, but it's also very interesting to go back and look at what's going on with your individual skills and how you interact with SMAPI. So the next thing that I really want to talk about, and I think this may be related to that, is APL 1.3, which was released. So if you aren't familiar with this, if you aren't using APL, we continue to push the envelope on what's possible on devices with screens. And so APL, the Alexa presentation language, is now in version 1.3. And there's a lot of new things that we can do inside of that. And there's a few things that I really want to call out. The first one is the idea of responsive components and templates. And what this basically allows you to do is, if you think about the word responsive in any other development practice, right, we are able to modify our layouts and our components to take advantage of the individual screen sizes and orientations of the devices that our users are using. And so I think I have an example of this here. These are some of the responsive components that we have available: the Alexa background, footer, header, icon button, image, on and on. And then we also have some templates for different layouts that you might want to use for those things. But what's neat about this is if I look at the Alexa icon button, which is this one, what this allows me to do is define a vector source for a specific icon that I may own that I want to use as a button. Let's say you're building an app that has a Twitter button, right? Somebody can tap it and it tweets some information. You could use a vector-based version of that Twitter icon, use that as your icon button, and then when people tap on it, you get all the controls that you would normally get with a button, right? Pressed, released, all that kind of stuff. So that's one big piece of this, is the idea of responsive layouts and a new set of controls like the Alexa icon button, the image list item, and the rating. So that's one core piece to what's going on with APL 1.3. But there's some other stuff that I really want to talk about as well. The next one is lazy loading. And so there's a lot of times where you might have, do I have that here? I think I have it showing here. So this is an example of lazy loading a list where I can actually provide the list initially, but only maybe load the first 7 or 8 items. And then I can insert other items, or I can add them to the list as I need to, so that I'm not loading a list of 200 items when the user is only going to see 5 or 6 at a time. So lazy loading allows me to continue to backload my list as the user scrolls and fill in data as I need it. So this is a really nice new feature that APL now exposes. Another one that I really thought was kind of cool, if we look at APL, is, I don't think I have that in this page here. Let me jump back and see if I have it here. Yeah, this. So this is the APL version. So what they're basically encouraging you to do is pay attention to versions, because as we continue to move forward, it might be that something in APL 1.3 really drew you in and you're like, oh, I'm going to start here. This is the first time I'm building something with APL. The important thing to remember is that there are people with devices that don't have the newest version of APL on them. They may have 1.2, 1.1, or even APL 1.0, which didn't support some of the newer features. And so we have this ability, like using this line here, to be able to determine what the APL version is. And if their response is null, then that means that they have the original APL 1.0. And then every version forward, it'll actually tell you what version it is. And so this is an example of creating an image when the APL version is 1.0, and they're using a JPEG for this because we didn't have any vector-based things in APL 1.0. And so what we're doing here is saying if the APL version is null, or 1.0, then I want you to show this JPEG. But if it's anything else, if it's not null, basically, then I want you to use this vector graphic that I've called lightbulb, and I want to use that as my graphic instead. And this is a way to do some easy version detection, but it allows you to get to a place where you can easily determine what's going on with the user's device, what version are they running, and can I feed them the appropriate content in the appropriate context for their specific device. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. But let's see. The pink light makes me look, my goodness, you guys are just talking behind my back here as I don't look at this. Let's see, keeping up with AWS Alexa new features. Let's see. Oh, Jeff Nunn is encouraging people not to follow me on Twitch. Boy, not a team player, but that's totally fine. He's saying you should follow me. I build some fun stuff. Jeff is also doing some fun stuff on Twitch, so give people a look up if you can. Also, for those of you that are following me, I'm running a push right now to get to 250 followers, and if I do that by the end of the month, I'm going to do an entire episode as Bob Ross, talking about happy little skills. So we'll see if that happens, if that encourages you to jump over. But all of my stuff is also here, so don't feel like you have to. Let's see. Nice tanned look. Pink makes me look younger. What's the difference between... Well, you guys are all over the place. Any stats on the number, on device numbers for percentage of APL versions? No, I don't have those numbers, and I don't think that Amazon publishes those. So I apologize, Spatical. We don't know those. I mean, someone knows those numbers, but I don't know those numbers, and I don't think that we're disclosing those, unfortunately. Okay, cool. Caught up on the chat. So that is the version detection. And then the last thing that I wanted to cover was on this page here. Well, this page? This page. You can now build clocks. I think this is kind of a very cool way to take advantage of some of the new data binding and the new time object, which allows you to access some of the time functions that are available directly on the device. So you can build things like stopwatches and digital clocks and analog clocks that I think are all very cool. There's been a array of different clocks that have already been published to the Skills store. So if you go and look for some clocks, people have built some very cool things out there. And again, they're just clocks. It's not like they're doing anything that's groundbreaking, but the way they're taking advantage of the screen is groundbreaking, and I think that's pretty cool. The other thing to talk about, and I don't have it on this page. Do I have it here? No. I thought I had a page that had the timers stuff on it. You know what? That's a whole section for later. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that now, but we'll talk about timers in a minute. But we now have the ability to access the time object on the user's device, so we can talk about building clocks and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that in the context of the APL 1.3 stuff. Okay, so the next thing that I want to get into is what we're calling the Intent Confidence Dashboard. And so this is something that is really interesting to me because of the kinds of skills that I build, where I have a wide array of content, and I need to make sure that my responses are coming to the appropriate intents at the appropriate time. And what I know right now is they either did or they didn't, but with this new Intent Confidence Dashboard, I can get a feel for how accurate I'm actually being and how close to missing I might actually be. And so let me give you an example with a couple of skills that I've built. The first one here, this is the Jeff Blankenberg skill that I was mentioning, the one that lets you change the color of this lamp. And you can see here that I only have a very few set of commands that you can do in that skill. So you can tell the lamp to change different colors. You can also ask for a couple of my favorite things, like my favorite baseball team or my favorite color. You can also ask for my contact information, right? So my email address or my phone number or my Twitter handle or things like that. But that's really it. That's the scope of the skill. And so as you can see in this Intent Confidence Dashboard, I have really high confidence on nearly everything. There's very rarely a time where I have medium confidence at all. It's either high or nothing. And that's kind of what you want. That's a really good example of a refined interaction model where you really have to understand exactly what users are doing, and you've built the things that the users want to do. On the flip side, I have another dashboard. This is for a skill that I built called the Unofficial Star Wars Databank, which is called out here if you'd like to give that one a try. And the idea here is that I have literally thousands of different things that this skill can answer. So it's all of the characters and vehicles and weapons and planets and locations and people and droids, everything that you can imagine from the Star Wars universe is contained there. The problem with that is that I have 12 different intents for each of the different categories. And then within those intents, I have slots that have hundreds of entries. And so there's a very fine line between what Alexa thinks is appropriate and what could be another opportunity, right? So this is a representation of a skill that doesn't have solid confidence all the time. I feel like the skill is performing well, but this is a good indication to me. If I don't expect my skill to be on the borderline like I do with this Star Wars skill, then this would be an indication to me that maybe I need to refine my interaction model. Maybe I need to add more utterances. Maybe I need to think about what my invocation name is. Maybe I need to revisit how I'm thinking about my slots and how I'm thinking about the user interaction that I'm encouraging. Because a lot of these, you can see that out of the, 20, 30, 42? Out of the 42 interactions, 5 of them were low confidence. Now, I haven't gone back to check and see if those low confidence ones hit the right place. That's something I'd have to dig in and find. But what it's showing me is that Alexa provided a response to a user and she had low confidence in her response. It doesn't mean she was wrong. It just means she wasn't as confident as she normally would be. And so this confidence dashboard really gives you a good quick view at like how strong is my interaction model. If you have all greens, you should feel pretty good about that. If you have a lot of red, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means maybe you want to evaluate it if you think it's an issue. So let's see what you guys think about that. We're just having conversations in the back. Gold Zulu asks, what if we use APL 1.3 on 1.1 devices? Will it die horribly? Yes, I would expect that you would get some errors in that case. So you really do want to be very, very sure. Link to the confidence page? Yeah, I can do that for sure. So I don't know if it's got my skill ID in the URL, so that's not going to be super helpful to you. But if you just go to analytics for your skill and come down here, there's an intent confidence button right here in the analytics dashboard. So that's probably the easiest way for you to get there, because any URL I give you isn't going to go directly there. You'd have to go through one of your skills to get there. Hope I didn't miss anything good. 36 people watching. That's super awesome. C# Fritz rated me yesterday. That is very true. What other tools can I... So Leo asks, what other tools can I use to dig into the low confidence responses? Well, that's a pretty good question. So there's a few things that I generally recommend, and it's to go here. I'm going to jump out of this dashboard, and we'll talk about two specifically. I don't remember who on my team said this to me. I think it might have been Greg Bullmash. But I have started doing this more and more. And it's under this evaluate model tool here. So there's two tools inside this box. There's the utterance profiler and the NLU evaluation. So the utterance profiler is just kind of a one-off thing, right? So this is for my Star Wars databank. So if I say Chewbacca, I can see that it thinks I want to hit the character intent, which makes perfect sense. And it's recognized that my slot value is the word Chewbacca. And if I type in something like R2D2, you can see that it recognized it was the droid intent. My droid slot is filled in with R2D2, spelled the way that I would expect it to be spelled. So this is a good one-off test to be able to do that stuff. But another thing you can do is come into the NLU evaluation tool, and this is where it gets a little more interesting. So let me open up my annotation sets, which I think I actually have to come down here for. Yeah. I'm going to look at the annotation set that I created just to show you what these look like. So I have R2-D2, I have Darth Vader, and I have Tell Me About Luke Skywalker. These are all different intents. And then the way that this works very similarly to what you'd expect unit tests to look like. So I say I expect the intent for R2-D2 to be the droid intent. I expect the slot to be droid. I expect the value to be R2-D2, just like this. And so let's add one more to this. I'll add so we'll add that. We're going to assume this is the character intent also. We'll expect that our slot would be character. And we would expect our value, I'll just type it in, AH, Ahsoka to know. Okay, so that's what I would expect my slot values to come back as. So I can come into this tool, and I can save my annotation set. And then once I've done that, this just takes a second, but I can run an evaluation of that annotation set. And what I get out of this is a good look, a good evaluation across a number of situations, right? I have all the Luke Skywalker, the Darth Vader, the R2-D2, but these could be a bunch of different things that you're doing inside your skill. And this lets you get a good look at some of the kinds of utterances that you're expecting and what kind of results you're actually getting. So my thing failed. So let's take a look at why it failed. And here's some good examples. So R2-D2, it expected that the value was going to be R2-D2. What I actually got was R2-D2. So this is not a major difference. It's probably going to be pronounced the same. But if you're trying to match on specific values, especially if you want to use these values to communicate with a database or an API or something like that, you need to make sure they're right. And so the thing that I was talking about with Greg Bullmash, and the point that he made for me was that he's starting to use these like unit tests. So before he's written any code, he goes in and starts building a bunch of these annotation sets to allow him to say, hey, this thing they should all fail initially, right? But slowly but surely, he should be able to go through, write some code, build a good interaction model, and get all of this stuff into a working state, which should give you a lot more confidence about how your skill is working. So hopefully that helps answer the question a little bit. Let's see. Can we limit only 1.3 devices can enable a skill? Gold Zulu, no, you can't do that either. This is one of those things where you need to provide a solid voice experience at all times. And once you've done that, then you can add APL. And you could only provide an APL experience for 1.3, but you can't only have them use your skill. I hope that makes sense. Alexa is all about voice. And so if you're going to build an Alexa skill, there needs to be a voice experience that works on all devices. That does not mean that you have to provide an equivalent APL experience on every device. If you don't want to support APL 1.0 devices, I don't encourage that, but if you don't want to do that, that's okay. You can build an APL experience that's only for 1.3, but the users of those devices that have 1.0 or 1.1 or whatever, all of them can use your skill just with their voices. You need to make sure that that's still a possibility. Lord of Sound says, I think Jeff should offer a bounty for every time you can stump his Star Wars trivia databank. I mean, we do take this seriously. I do have a Mandalorian helmet sitting right here. Like, Star Wars is the thing, man. And a friend of mine actually made this for me. This was 3D printed and painted to look like metal, but it is, it's incredible. If it fit my head, I would put it on, but apparently my head is gigantic. So I'm sure Lord of Sound wants to be a bounty hunter. Who wouldn't? Paul Cutzinger is here. Let's see. Amazon really needs to reconsider the policy of not having display-only devices. Lord of Sound, what do you mean by that? You mean building skills that are only for devices with displays? Oh yeah, now we're blue. You guys are really getting into the lights. Display-only skills, yeah. I think the challenge is that we're talking about the wrong devices. If people want to build display-only things, that feels like something you should build for the Fire TV or for Kindle Fire devices or something like that, tablets. It's hard to justify building Alexa things when the devices are voice specific, and then the visuals are meant to be additional. And I know where you're coming from, Lord of Sound. We've talked through some of the issues that you've encountered, but it's one of those things that, like, Alexa's about voice. And it's very, very hard to get to a situation where you would build a thing that's only for screen, and then, like, as a backup, maybe you could use your voice. Alexa's very voice-centric. It's voice first, right? That's the whole point of this platform. And so if you're going to talk about voice, if you're going to talk to the voice stuff, the visuals have to be extra. They have to be something that's complementary, not something that is dependent on being able to use the thing. Yeah, this light is on fire right now. I'm glad you guys are changing it. Oh, it's super fun. It makes it interactive. It makes it fun for all of you. I'm totally in. Okay, so we've talked about the Intent Confidence dashboard. I see that Leo also provided a link. So make sure this is the blog post about the Intent Confidence. That's very, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. The next thing that I want to talk about is timers. So let's jump back in here and understand how timers work. So the way that this timers API works is how most of the other customer profile API stuff works, right? You have to request permissions. The user can grant permissions through a card or when they enable the skill on the skills store. So you have to request these permissions from the user, and they have to grant them before you can do these things. But once they've done that, excuse me, once they've enabled that permission, you have the ability to set timers on their device. So there's a lot of good situations for this. If you're a cooking or a recipe skill, you could say, okay, I'm going to set an 8-minute timer for you. You just put the chicken in the oven. And it works exactly like the timers that you set yourself with your voice. So the user can stop it if they need to stop it early. They can also pause the timer if they need to wait for a minute because you said, hey, I'm going to start an 8-minute timer for your chicken. And you're like, wait, dude, I haven't even sprinkled the paprika or whatever I'm supposed to put on the chicken. So give me a second. So they can pause the timer and then they can restart it when they're ready. You can also name the timers. I don't know. A lot of people don't know this, but if you build a timer with your voice, so if I were to say, I won't say her name and set off your devices, but set a 10-minute chicken timer, then later Alexa will be like, hey, your chicken timer is done, right? It reminds you what that timer was for. And when I'm cooking, I often have 2 or 3 going at the same time because I'm boiling pasta at the same time that I'm cooking chicken at the same time that something else is happening, right? Making a sauce or whatever. And so being able to set these kinds of timers are cool, but this is also useful for things like workouts or any other kind of exercise or meditation or anything else like that where you need someone to just do something for a period of time. It's very easy using these permissions to be able to set a timer for a user automatically and say, okay, we're going to do another rep of 7 push-ups or whatever. Go, it's 60 seconds. And then the alarm goes off. They can get back into your skill and go. Now, this isn't like the reminders API. This isn't like some of the other things that we have that are triggers to get back into your skill. These are just timers. We're just creating timers on the user's system. So if leave your skill, they would have to come back to your skill to get back into what they were doing. But timers are great, and they're a great way to allow the user to know what's going on or how long something has taken to go. So that's timers. The other stuff that I want to talk about is fallback intent sensitivity. This is a new feature that just was released as well. And the nice thing about the fallback sensitivity is it allows you to decide how specific fallback intent is going to be. Now, just to qualify this, this is only available in English and in German. I'm sure they will be adding more languages, but we aren't just there yet. Let's see if I've missed anything. I knew Justin was the one setting it to pink. I had a good feeling about that. Paul says when he drives with Echo Auto, he sets chicken timers a lot. That makes sense. Okay, I don't think I'm missing anything else. Okay, so the way fallback intent works is if you're building a skill like my Star Wars one, I need some broad reach. I need to be able to make sure that my intents have an opportunity to succeed. So I would not use fallback intent sensitivity for this because there's so many things that you might talk about. I don't want the fallback intent to be grabbing things that it shouldn't be. But on the flip side of that, as they call out here, if you have a skill where most of your answers are yes or no or true or false, anything outside of that scope, you really want it to be part of the fallback intent. You want to say like, hey, I don't know what you said, but I was expecting yes or no or true or false. So you can amp up the sensitivity of the fallback intent so that it almost matches what your interaction model looks like. So if you have 7 utterances for a specific intent, if the user doesn't say one of those 7 things, it's probably going to hit the fallback intent. I don't know that that's exactly true. I haven't modeled all this stuff out, but my feel is that if I set it to high, it's really saying, I want you to catch nearly everything that doesn't match what I'm expecting. And the way that I indicate what I'm expecting is the interaction model. Medium is some balance between what we see today and what high is, so it's more sensitive, but not as sensitive as you might expect with as high. So there's a lot of very good examples in here in the tech docs. I'll take this and add it to our page here. I just put a link in the chat, so if you want to see that, you can see that there. But the fallback intent sensitivity is pretty cool. I think that there's a lot of opportunities to make sure that people aren't saying things that land in the wrong place, if that makes sense. By amping up the sensitivity of fallback intent, it allows you to let the skill fall back more frequently, but in a way that makes, ideally, a better experience for your users. So hopefully that is helpful and understandable. Okay, so the last things that I have to cover, and you guys are doing a great job of asking questions in the chat. So if you have questions about any of this stuff, I'm more than happy to answer them as best I can. But there's one thing that I really wanted to cover off on, and I don't think we've covered this in a release roundup before, but I wanted to make sure that I touched on this specific topic. This was released in very early March, on March 2nd, and it's the idea that we have a bunch of different ways to share slots across our skills. This is not something I've played with, and I knew this was coming, but I actually missed the release of this. And so this is something that I want to go back and revisit because I think both of the things that I'm about to discuss are incredibly valuable for most skill developers. The gotcha to all of this is that these are both only available via the CLI, so you won't find these in the developer console. But they are powerful, and I would imagine at some point they will find their way to the developer console. So the first one is catalog management. The idea here, and I think I have a page for this, is that I can create a catalog of data, and I can call the SMAPI, the Skill Management API, and update my skills catalog anytime that I want, which means that I can dynamically update my slot value. I think the example they use in some of this is that if you ran a grocery store, the products that you offer on a day-to-day basis can change. It can be a daily change. The same could be true of restaurants or other things where, we're out of fish today. We don't want to offer fish as part of our menu. So what this allows you to do is dynamically update your entire slot value from an external data source, and you actually provide the URL. So it's going to call out and get the catalog that you've provided someplace externally. And then you can use that to modify your slot values on a really frequent basis. This is not like dynamic entities where I am actually funneling the data during an interaction where I'm dynamically updating them in the interaction as I go. I see that more purposeful for things like personalization, where when someone says call Jeff, Jeff has a specific meaning to that specific user, and we know who that is because we've created dynamic entities that map Jeff to a specific phone number or person or entity of some kind. But this catalog management, what this allows us to do is specifically manage and maintain a universal database of slot values for all of our users all the time instead of on a one-by-one basis. So catalog management I think is super cool. I haven't gotten to use this yet, but this seems like exactly what I'm looking for things like my Star Wars database. Right now I have to also update all of my slots and then do a push and do a certification. This takes all of that away and allows me to very easily update my slots by just pointing it directly at my data sources. I think that's going to solve a lot of problems for me there. The other one that I wanted to talk about is being able to create a slot type that you can use across skills. So I'm sure many of you have encountered a situation where you've built a slot type that you needed for something, and then you build a second slot and you're like, I got to build that again. I got to build that entire slot type again. This allows you to build your own slot types outside of your skill and then use that slot type across your skills as you see fit. And so again, this is all API based, but you basically just create the slot type and pass in the same parameters. Everything is really the same. The only difference is that you have the ability to then use these slot types in your skills. So you can call out and say, hey, I have this new slot type called color list, maybe something I'm creating for my lamp skill. And once I've done that, then I want to use that color list someplace else. I want to use the exact same data, the same set. And so this allows me to basically create my own slot types that I can use across a number of different skills. That was a lot of talking. So let's see what's in the comments here. And that's everything that I wanted to cover. So now what I'd love to do is get into any questions that we have. For the fallback intent sensitivity, I believe the fallback intent sensitivity is just set in your interaction model. So it's only settable in the JSON. I don't think that you can go into the UI and just switch it higher or lower. It's actually published that way and it becomes part of your interaction model. It sounds like Jeff Nunn has a blog post coming out on this soon, so that's super cool. Let's see. Anybody remember RSS readers to track blog posts? Man, I loved RSS readers. I got a lot of my information that way. And once they killed Google Reader, everything kind of died in that world. And it's kind of sad because there's not a good... I don't want emails from every blog I care about. I just want to aggregate that all in one place. But I definitely remember them. Are you using reference-based catalog management to access Airtable, Lord of Sound asks. I will be. I'm not yet, but I will be. So let's do the catalog management link here. Catalog management. And then the other one was the skill type. So we'll do that one too. Trade uses Feedly. Yeah, I haven't gotten into Feedly. I just don't read as many blogs as I used to, but it is one of those things that I should get back into because I was really learning a lot as I was reading other people's blogs. Let's see. Is the data which you'll get through the Audit API filled automatically without any configuration? Yeah, all of that stuff is already captured and gathered, so you can even go back in your history of your skill. It's just that now you have the ability to access it. But yeah, all of that stuff is automatically captured, so you don't have to tell it what to capture and what not to. But you do have to specify filters to say what you want. My assumption is you can go back as far as your skill can... I would imagine this has always been logged. So I don't know that there's a specific start date, but I'm sure we'll find out as soon as people start playing with it. But I don't know the specific answer if there's a specific date, but SMAPI's been around for a few years, and I would imagine most of that stuff is already logged in some way. Because they would want that for their internal logging. If anything went wrong, they'd need to be able to track it. So I'm guessing it's been logged for a while. but I don't specifically know the answer to that question. And that's the problem with this new stuff is like I was thankful that the intent confidence dashboard actually worked for my skill because I don't have skills with a lot of traffic. And with a lot of these new features, I need a skill that has a couple hundred users a day to be even able to see that stuff. But thankfully that worked pretty well, and it gives a nice visual on some real skills. I think most blogs still have an RSS feed because they're published on some platform like WordPress. WordPress definitely has an RSS feed for every blog that's published on it, and I would imagine most of the other engines do too. So it's just a matter of finding where that RSS feed is because it's not always super obvious. But a lot of them still have that little RSS icon that we've remember from back in the day. I think mine does. Well, no, I just completely redid this, so it probably is not. Probably not there. Is that even going to open? Sometimes this resolves and sometimes it doesn't. I don't understand. That one does. So I don't even have the link here. It looks like WordPress has a reader, so maybe you can just subscribe to it that way. I don't know. We're kind of getting off topic there, but that's a good thing to check out. Yeah, I'm with you. Like the time that I used to spend reading seems to have evaporated. And I really enjoyed blogs because I think, and I'll encourage anybody to do this, if you solve an interesting problem, or even not that interesting a problem, if you do something that you figured out today, you should really write it down. Write it in a blog post. Because not only are you sharing it with everybody else, somebody's going to find value in that. Someone's going to be searching and find your page and be like, wow, this totally solved my problem. But on top of that, I can't tell you the number of times that I have gone searching for a solution to a problem and found my own blog post that I wrote a year or a year and a half earlier that solves exactly the thing that I'm facing now. So being able to document that stuff for yourself is a big benefit. I can't encourage it enough. But the fact that you can help others is also a nice perk. All right, this is not a time-boxed show, so if we don't have a ton of additional questions, we can certainly wrap this up too. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew what was going on and that we got a good coverage on the new features that have been released in the last month. There's some very cool stuff, and every month it's like this. You get in and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that thing existed. And now I want to go play with it and build some custom slots and everything else. TradeLast has found the RSS feed for my blog, so thank you for doing that. I'm not publishing as often as I used to, but I used to write a few articles a week. Now it's more like a couple articles a month maybe. But with all of the development that I've been doing lately, I have a lot to share. And I don't think I can post all of that to the Alexa blog, so a lot of it will probably end up there. All right. Well, in lieu of any other questions, I think we can call it a day on this release roundup. Hopefully you guys learned a few new things. I always recommend if we scroll back in the comments, or I'll just come back to this page. If we go back to the website and you click on this What's New, I can't recommend enough to go to the feature updates that we have here. And this is where you'll find all of the information on all the latest features that have been published, including documentation, where to find the APIs, and blog posts that explain how to use them the best. So with that, I think I will call it a day on this broadcast. Thank you guys all for tuning in, and we will see you again on here very soon. Take care.